Hello guys, welcome back to Foundations of Math 2. This is Mike coming at you with another video. In the previous video, we talked about inductive and deductive reasoning and what we're using to base our conclusions on. For inductive reasoning, we are concluding based on observations. For deductive reasoning, we are concluding based on facts. In this video, we are going to get into estimating and being able to approximate various costs. Being able to approximate or estimate things is a very, very important skill. Arguably, the most important area where you really want to know how to estimate is in terms of estimating costs for things and having to budget your money for, say, monthly expenses. If you're going to do work on your house, things like that, being able to get an estimate as to about how much things will cost to have done so that you make sure that you have the money that you need for those things to happen. And really when it comes to estimating costs and having to budget your money, it's actually better to overestimate just a little bit. If you get some number that you're thinking that this thing will be in the end, then round it up to, say, the nearest $500 or so, or the nearest $1,000, just so you have a little bit more room in there in case some other costs come up that you didn't plan on. So here is just one quick sample here. Suppose I need to purchase 125 feet of fencing for my yard, and suppose that the fencing costs $8.79 per foot. What is the approximate cost going to be for the fencing? Now, when we talk about an approximate cost, we're not necessarily looking for the spot on value here. Although we have calculators and we can plug numbers into calculators and we can do that for us, let's make these numbers nicer so that it's something we can do perhaps inside of our head or just something we can do on paper on our own. So I have fencing for 125 feet, and it costs $8.79 per foot. So having to do 125 times 8.79 is going to be a little bit nasty. So let's just round that fencing cost up so that we have a nicer number that we are going to work with here. So since 8.79 is close to 9, we can estimate the cost to be $9 per foot times 125 feet. So we're estimating $1,125 for the cost of fencing. You may even want to round the cost up to $10 to make it even easier to calculate. 125 times 10 is $1,250. And that gives you, again, a little bit more room to play with in terms of estimating how much it will cost. You make sure you have the money for it, and then if some other costs come up that you weren't planning on incurring, then it still falls within the money that you had in the budget for that fencing. Here's another sample, one that probably more of us are familiar with. We are looking into purchasing the new iPhone, and we want to see what our costs will be for a full year. The phone costs $979.99, and then the plan charges you $47.99 per month for unlimited talk and text, as well as some gigabytes of data in there as well. What is the approximate cost going to be for a full year? So we have the cost coming from the cost of the phone itself, and then the cost of the monthly charge. Well, in terms of the cost of just the phone, $979.99 is an odd number to work with, so let's just round it up to 1,000. That's a nice number that we can work with when it comes to having to add. Now we move on to the cost of the monthly plan charge. The monthly plan charge as given was $47.99. Again, that's an odd number. Let's round it up to a nice number of 50. So we're going to estimate and we're going to budget $50 per month for the cost of the monthly plan charge. Well, that's the cost per month. We want to know the cost for a whole year. There's 12 months in a year. So the cost of the plan for the entire year, $50 per month times 12 months, and that gives you $600. So if we add up the cost of the phone and the cost of the plan for the whole year, that gives us an estimate of $1,600. So we want to set $1,600 off to the side to cover the cost of the phone and the phone plan for one full year. So we can see that we're always rounding these things up when it comes to costs and having to set money off to the side for things that you want. Again, it's always better to set aside more than what you would actually need. This is why we round these costs up, so that when things are all said and done, if the costs are as they were stated that they were, and there were no extra fees that came up along the way, and you've paid that off, you have a little bit of extra money that you just feel good. You just feel good that you have it. It's also very important to be able to estimate costs by looking at graphs of various kinds. This is a bar graph here. This is a graph about book sales of various types of fictional books. We have the years 2006, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then we have the gross earnings on the left-hand side. So by looking at a graph here, you should be able to estimate about what is what were the sales for a particular type of book in a particular year. So first one here, in the year 2009, what was the approximate gross earnings for classic books? And we say that this is approximate because we can see on this graph here on the left-hand side that it just gives us the larger numbers, the nicer numbers, 20,000, 40,000, 60,000, and so up. But it doesn't really measure in between those. So we kind of have to estimate based on how far up the particular bar that we are looking for is. We have to sort of estimate about what that cost is going to be. So classic books are in yellow. We want the year 2009. So I'm going to look at this yellow bar here. I see that it's above this horizontal line, which is $20,000. It's below this line, which is $40,000. We're not quite halfway in between there, which would put it at 30. We're just under that. We're just under the halfway mark. So we're just under 30,000. So an estimate as to the gross earnings for classic books for the year 2009, we could say would be $28,000. Now there is a little bit of leeway here. If you were to get a question like this on a quiz or a test, I would allow a certain quantity of like leeway as far as what your answer would be. 30,000 I would probably be okay with, even though it's really not quite halfway. But I think 28,000 or within a couple thousand of there is going to be a reasonable estimate for the gross earnings. In the year 2006, what was the approximate combined earnings for mystery books and for sci-fi and fantasy books? So we're going to the year 2006. Mystery is in red, and sci-fi and fantasy is in brown. If I look at the red bar here, this is going just over 60,000. We could estimate, say, 61,000, 62,000. We'll go 62,000. And now we need the estimate for the sci-fi and fantasy. It's not quite at the $20,000 mark yet, but it is just a little bit underneath that. Again, allowing a little bit of leeway here. I'd say somewhere, just by looking at it, somewhere about 17, 18,000. We'll say 18,000 there. So these are the estimates for each of these two genres of books, mystery and sci-fi or fantasy individually. If we add these up, we get $80,000. So that is the approximate combined earnings for these two genres of books in the year 2006. Again, there's no really one concrete number that you come up with. These answers do have a little bit of leeway to them, a little bit of range. But again, since we're talking about money here, err on the side of maybe going a little bit higher. So this was an example of being able to look at a bar graph and estimate gross earnings in this case from a bar graph. Now we're going to look at a pie chart or a pie graph, and we're going to see an example where we estimate costs. So if we look at this project cost breakdown here, we see that we have the percentages of what the total cost for the entire project gets broken down into. 24.48% goes into production, 20.98% goes into facilities, 17.48% goes into labor, and so on and so forth. So, a couple of questions here. Suppose that for this project, the project's total cost was $625,000. So first up, what is the approximate cost for licenses for this particular project? So we see that the licenses, looking at our pie chart here, licenses account for 12.59% of the total cost of our project. And as I said earlier on, while we do have calculators, and we could just plug these numbers in and we could come up with the actual cost, for just a quick sort of roundabout estimate as to what this is, we do want to work with some nicer values here. So the percentage of 12.59, that's really nasty. That's not really a thing that we want to really see here. So let's work with a nicer percentage. 15% is a nicer percentage to work with here when it comes to estimating the cost. Yes, it is a little bit higher. How much higher is a little bit of a subjective question, I should say. That can vary based on who it is that you're working for. If you have to report these numbers to some company or to some a group, they may want an estimate within a particular dollar quantity of the true value. But that's not always the case. So let's just work with 15% of $625,000. If we do 0.15, we are using it as a decimal here because we want to come up with the actual dollar quantity. If we did 15 times 625,000, then we would get a number that's more than the total cost, and that doesn't make sense. So if we do 0.15, same for 15%, times 625,000, this is the estimate for the actual cost, and that estimate is $93,750. So that's the approximate cost for the licensing for this particular project. Again, we worked with a nicer percentage. It's not the true cost, but it's a fairly close estimate as to what the actual cost for licensing is going to be. What is the approximate combined cost for insurance and labor? All right, so let's look at the percentages for insurance and labor. The combined cost would be the combined percentage that these two items take up in the breakdown, and then multiply by 625,000. If I add 5.59 and 17.48, that's going to give me 23.07%. Now, again, this is a nasty looking percentage that we have to work with here. So let's work with a nicer percentage that is pretty close to it. The percentage that is pretty darn close to it and is very nice to work with is 25%, or 0.25. So let's just estimate 25% of our insurance and labor is going to come from 25% of our cost is going to come from insurance and labor. So if we do 0.25 times the 625,000, and if we plug that into our calculator, we get 156,250. So there we go. There is an estimated combined cost for insurance and labor for this particular project. So being able to take information that's given to you on a graph or a pie chart and being able to use that in our given word problem, very, very important to know how to do. So this concludes this video on being able to approximate and or estimate things. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to reach out to me. Send me an email, send up the bat signal, send a carrier pigeon to my house, whatever you have to do. Otherwise, until the next video, take it easy, guys.